I brought with me to the studio today Hellbox, a collection of short stories by John O'Hara. All of the passions, sacred and profane, etched in acid. Hellbox, a series of stories by a noted American writer who wrote many novels out of the little town in Pennsylvania. And what he's really good for is American dialogue. He has an ear for dialogue that no one else has in the American cadence, the American idiom, and the American rhythm. And if you have a son or daughter who has a literary interest, make sure that they get that son or daughter gets John O'Hara under the belt. When I was working on a master's degree at UT, my advisor said, "Well, you have a very stilted dialogue, David, in your fictional work, and you've too much influence of Catherine Mansfield. You need to man up. You need to get a bit of testosterone in your perspective." So O'Hara is the antidote, and he was absolutely right. Make sure that you have your writing person read. These are adult stories, right? These are not stories for children. But if there are salacious things, they're conveniently not in view, and they are very American, very adult, very real stories told with inimitable dialogue you can't imitate unless you really work at it. You can imitate, and you have to really listen. This is David Tulis. We cover local economy and the free market here in Chattanooga and beyond. And I argue that you should love your neighbor and buy local. Our number, we do want to be interrupted today by your call. Sam Spade and I want to be interrupted by you. The number is 800-8949. Write that down, 800-8949, the number to get into the David Tulis Show, brought to you by Nooganomics.com, that has out there today the story about the freedom-loving people of Ray County, north of Chattanooga, the rural county home of Bryan College and the Scopes Monkey Trial, and the future home of Nokian Tires, which it will be a multi-million-dollar investment that will hire many hundreds of people who live and work there and who will move there to a free market-oriented county, zoning-free county, and the county executive, George Thacker, is going to make sure, given what he told me last night in my report for this morning, there will not be zoning in Ray County, because those people who've not lived under the government of zoning are freer, and they will not have it. They won't have anything even suggesting the coming of zoning in their freedom-loving Ray County. This is David Tulis. Read the story today at Nooganomics.com. That's Nooganomics.com. Now, we heard a moment ago the thrilling execution of a citizen who had done nothing deserving of capital offense. He was being barked at by 6 officers. Well, one officer among 6 who kept shouting at him, giving contradictory commands to sit, to stand, to interlace his fingers, to put his hands behind his back, to lie on his belly, to crawl forward, to not move, etc. All progressively complex. A man slightly inebriated who ended up being hit by 5 well-placed bullets in the center of his body, dead on the floor by courageous officers. Officer Brailsford, the one who went on trial for murder and was acquitted by the good people in that county in Arizona. Now, the question we have is a kind of theoretical question. How are we going to improve ourselves in Chattanooga and local economy? What about police being armed? Is there, we have armed police because somehow we can't protect ourselves. We all have the fantasy, Sam Spade, that police are there to protect us, and yet in your estimation, you are a publisher and a libertarian writer and thinker here in the Chattanooga area, and oversee the Bitcoin Meetup group. In your estimation, what is the purpose police serve? You might say politically or economically. Do they have a purpose other than solving crimes?
Well, that's a very tough question. I'm not of the strong mind that you are. I think that police do have an essential function. I don't personally believe that we can count on the individual to police all matters. In fact, it really strikes at the root, I believe, of what is a government. What is the definition of government? Why do we have government at all? Why do we need it?
You mean the state or government?
I mean government. All right. And the answer that I have to come out with is that it's the control of violence. that you know of tribal societies in which vendettas come into effect because one individual struck back at another individual for committing an eye for an eye sort of an offense. And the result is that the two groups supporting the two individuals get more and more and more angry, and before long you have a feud that goes on indefinitely. And this is unfortunately very, very common in tribal societies. And as far as I can see, the major reason for bringing government into existence is that all the tribal societies have said, look, we will agree to adjudicate by a higher authority this problem, and we will agree to allow this authority to deal with the problem and met out any punishment that's appropriate. And the advantage of that is that you can now have both parties wash their hands and say, okay, we don't need to go take an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. This doesn't continually go on and on and on. And so really the issue of stopping vendettas, stopping intertribal feuds, stopping this sort of thing, I think is an important function of government.
Well, it sounds like what I would offer as an alternative to what I would describe as the kind of evolutionary myth of the arrival of government, which I don't want to contend on right now, would be what is the function of the state or the function of the civil magistrate? And I would say that that biblically and that perhaps in terms of free market economics and libertarianism, the function of the state is to provide a court, a venue where disputes can be settled, contract disputes, boundary disputes, property arguments, the settlement of cause for wrongful death, for example, a killing or a murder or a rape. These are all clear wrongs in equity. They can be solved by the state, but that makes the state. If your theory is that the state should be limited, not an executive state, not an aggressive state, and proactive one, but rather one that's passive. Maintaining the court, which is always open, for disputants to come to for resolution of their crimes or torts. Then you really don't have room for police in that scenario.
Well, the question is who enforces the decisions of the courts. I mean, that's what we're talking about. And my feeling is that if you have the court simply say, well, you killed your neighbor George out of spite because you were both drunk and you beat him up with a bottle and he died, and therefore you're guilty of murder, and an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and therefore we're going to have you put to death. Who's going to do the job? If you turn to the family of the group that is wronged in this matter, then the family of the other group feels that they have are put upon to try and defend their honor, defend their relatives. So you almost are forced, if that is your philosophy, to say the state has to have an enforcement arm that makes sure that court dictates are enforced, at least in criminal matters. And it seems to me that's an essential requirement.
Well, has the modern corporate state done that, or has it done that and gone way past it?
Oh, I believe it's gone way past it. I mean,
where should the retreat, if retreat is in order, where should that take place as regards the public order and public peace?
Well, I don't think it's a question of where it should. It's a question of where it can. The problem that we have is that the forces of centralization are using various mechanisms, including the printing of money, to control all of these authoritarian structures all the way down to the local level. So they have control over what the police do. They have control over what the courts do. They have control over the legislature and what the laws are passed. The problem that we have as individuals on the bottom who don't have access to this stream of printed money that comes pushing out of Washington is, how do we break this deadlock? How do we break this addiction that our law enforcement and our government, even at the local level, have?
Well, what is the manifestation of this addiction, Sam Spade, of this free money?
Well, one of them is that you have a huge list of things that are illegal. I mean, the purpose of laws is to control people. And so the more laws they are, the more the state is able to control you. You know, you can't control an innocent man with a police force, in theory, because legally you can't justify that. But if you make enough crimes that you can be confident that he committed a crime somewhere, somehow, some way, all you got to do is find out what that crime is, and then you got him. He's now a criminal. You can drag him down. You can throw him in jail. You can do whatever you need to.
And under the ethic of the modern police state, we're all criminals. We just haven't been caught. And there's lenity and grace on the part of the state and not going after us to nail down all of our offenses.
Yes, that unfortunately
We can be thankful.
there's an excellent book called Three Felonies a Day, which argues that in fact all of us every day, without even knowing it, are committing 3 felonies a day. Do you realize if you change your address and you use some of your old checkbooks with your old address on it to write a check, you have just committed a felony. It's a felony to pass a check with a false address. I mean, this is an example of the way situations have become so absurd. You just, all you have to do is take a look at the recent fiascos with the sexual abuse things going on and on and on in Congress right now and in the body politic to see them using these weapons against each other. Well, those weapons are also being used against us.
Well, the local economy argument I make, Sam Spade, is weak on many points. I admit it. I admit it is not comprehensive. It is perhaps a poetical theory, maybe a biblical concept that is something we can yearn for. But Alan Dershowitz, in the book you mentioned, Three Felonies Today, which I read with great care, a recent history of legal cases against people, often whom were really innocent of any crime, except talking to officers or investigators. That concept of we've all been made into victims. We're all potentially liable for criminal accusation. We all live in fear. And it seems that the trends toward decentralization, which are technical, the internet is a picture of that, and also the breaking up of large non-functional or dysfunctional systems, such as the United States. These are things not that we should dread, perhaps so much as really look forward to. How is this trend on decentralization? How you're saying, Sam Spade, that we've centralized the peacekeeping function in the corporation here, Chattanooga, 500 strong, you might say, military organization, a vertically integrated military organization, and we are supposedly kept safe by it. How does the decentralization trend favor the ending, or even the abolition, or the overturning, or the withdrawal of subsidy from such organizations?
Well, I don't think the term withdraw of subsidies is really appropriate, because that implies a voluntarism on the part of the central authority. And I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think a collapse of the subsidies is more appropriate, because the dollar is in serious trouble right now. Our entire debt money system is in serious trouble. It's only a matter of time before the crash begins. Many people project that it's going to happen next year. I don't know. It's been projected for a long time, and they've managed to keep it going. But it's clear that is coming. And when it comes, all of a sudden, those dollars that the federal government is printing won't be available anymore to support the structure of the local government. The local government will suddenly have to support itself with the local taxes. And when that happens, all of these laws that are on the books that the police have been hired to enforce, just to get enough police to enforce them, are suddenly going to become questions. They're going to say, well, wait, do we really want to issue somebody a ticket just because his brake light is out? Do we want to really have a cop going around checking all the time to find out whether your license plate is expired? Do we really want to have a whole set of enforcement people doing nothing but going around and checking buildings to be sure that they're up to code? You know, the long list of things that are really irrelevant and don't matter anymore is going to become more and more apparent. And that's the hope that I have.
And the reason that there's pressure against or toward ending those things is that they're friction, and they also have a public cost. There's a great deal of dislike and hatred of agents of the state in black neighborhoods, in government slums where black people live. Police are roundly hated, roundly feared, and yet when we mention that, when I'm mentioning decentralization of the policing function, Sam, that's kind of what I wanted to get back to. We have public safety is centralized now. The armed citizen concept, which is very American ideal, is an argument against it and a limit on that power. But we have official police violence. We have in Chattanooga there's abuse by Mayor Andy Burke's police department in the Hanson Melvin case, the Rochelle Gelpin case. We know there are conspiracies by officers to protect lying cops on the force who they're known on the force as perjurers, and at least one remains there without any interruption. And so there is this coherence and this fidelity and honor among these officers. Again, almost as if they were in an occupation through the mayor's office of the people and the street life in Chattanooga. Now, so what I'm asking about is the decentralization function. If the safety function is going to be decentralized, and the authority of it comes back to the individual, that implies more armed individuals. That implies adopting a frame of thought for my listener that is taking responsibility and not just leaving that responsibility to the state and its officers, right?
I think, excuse me, I think more important is the fact that it's very difficult for the individual to even know where he stands when confronting a police officer, because the laws are so complicated and so difficult that both parties realize that they can't figure them out. And so the police officer winds up having to wing it, and you're never really sure what's going to go on when that occurs. If the entire legal structure were simplified because we had far fewer laws, in other words, if we were only concerned with truly victim-related crimes, not the large number of victimless
assault,
crimes,
burglary, theft,
exactly,
rape, murder,
exactly, then we wouldn't need anywhere near the number of police officers we have. Because you can go and look at the list of such crimes that actually occur in Chattanooga. And I know we are bombarded with the fact that they are huge, but in fact, you go to, Spot Crime and a couple of other websites that actually have a list of the crimes and where they occur and how often they occur. In most neighborhoods in Chattanooga, they're very, very low. Your chances of being involved or witnessing or in any way being associated with a true victim-based crime are very, very low.
Well, you have a concern, Sam Spade, in Bitcoin, which is a digital cryptocurrency, an alternative to the monopoly money that we have, the Federal Reserve dollar. How could technology benefit the public peace part of the market? That is to say, the market now controlled by police, and sheriff's deputies.
Again, that ties back into the whole issue of how is Chattanooga able to support economically all these laws? How are they able to do it, and why do they do it? And the answer is they're being given money from the national level. Printed money comes in free. They're being given it and told, if you don't support these laws, we're going to cut you off. So they're forced to support those laws. If that money stopped, there'd be far less demand. All of a sudden, people would be going through the book saying, throw this one out, throw that one out, throw this one, throw out. And Bitcoin is an option for the first time for people to be able to function economically or long distance trade if the dollar collapses. And I think, when the dollar collapses, this is not just a problem of the dollar. This is a problem worldwide. You have fiat currencies controlling countries in every single nation in the world. And in every single nation in the world, they're all hitting a debt bubble collapse. And when that happens, they're all going to be in trouble. I think the price rise you see in Bitcoin is a precursor of that, is people in all of these countries beginning to realize, hey, I don't need to deal with my local banks. I don't need to have to worry about going through border control activities. I can send money overseas to a foreign country from the foreign country I'm in, buy something, have it shipped back to me, and not have to worry at all about dealing with the banking system. And I think that's the reason you're seeing an explosion in Bitcoin.
The rise of the sovereign individual, a book that came out in the late 90s, predicting many of the things that are now happening. Caller, this is David Tulis. You're live on the air. What's on your mind?
Yeah, and the biggest fiat currency is Bitcoin. Dollar's not going to collapse. The Federal Reserve is in control. The police state's in control. But look how Bitcoin just supposedly went up in value again. You can't have anything as money that fluctuates in value, especially as much as Bitcoin. I mean, what can I buy with Bitcoin? Can I go to Walmart? Can I pay my electric bill? Can I buy gas with it? But tell me what I can buy with this so-called Bitcoin.
Actually, the issue is not what you can buy now, but what you can buy in the future if the dollar keeps losing value and the Bitcoin keeps going up.
It is worse than the Federal Reserve. It's the Federal Reserve on steroids.
No, the Federal...
Anything that claims to be money has to have a store of value, has to be stable.
If that were true, you wouldn't see the quantity of dollars.
If one Bitcoin was worth one silver dollar, 371 of the quarter grains of fine silver, now you have something of value. But just to randomly say, okay, today it's worth 1,000 and tomorrow it's worth, how the hell can you contract? How can you do business with that? It's the Federal Reserve on steroids. It's a Ponzi scheme. The more I read about it, the more I look at it as a Ponzi scheme. It's a scam.
Listen, thanks, Mike. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, really, the question is, why does money have value? And that's far more complicated than I think we can deal with in the rest of this hour. But it's probably a question that is Bitcoin has really brought to the fore. It has value because it's part of a network, and Bitcoin is a growing, bigger network. That's why the price of Bitcoin
It has value as
up.
a social construct. This is David Tulis.
Right.
We're talking with Sam Spade about decentralization. We've been looking at policing as an area where decentralization is needed, and perhaps the black clergy could call for decentralization on that point here in Chattanooga and in Mesa, Arizona. David Tulis.
Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.